Social media has been ablaze this week with the story of a brilliant Ukrainian fighter pilot known only as the Ghost of Kyiv, who is reportedly traversing the skies, taking down Russian jets with his incredible skill. A number of videos posted to Twitter early on in the invasion show a jet soaring through the sky amid speculation that this one pilot downed 6 Russian planes on the first day alone. Videos showing the pilot have been shared even by Ukraine's former president and top defense ministry officials. The identity of the pilot unknown, so too, to be frank, is the veracity of the story, but it still captivated the nation, giving courage and hope to the people of Ukraine. And it raises the issue of mythology and the importance of individual stories of heroism in war as a way of inspiring and arousing any nation under siege. To talk more about some important historical examples of stirring combat bravery and perhaps some of the tall tales that followed is Rundown host Kalev Ben David joining us in the studio. Kalev, thanks for being with us. Let's start, if we can, even with the First World War, right, 100 years ago.
But first, let's just note, even before we do that, the celebration, the glorification of war heroes is a fundamental narrative of Western civilization, going back to the Iliad and Achilles against the Trojans, the Hebrew Bible with Samson and David against Goliath. But you're right, 100 years ago, with the creation of mass media, it became a real-time propaganda tool for governments and militaries. And of course, we start with a famous ace, maybe the most famous flying ace of all time. The Red Baron was a real person, Manfred von Richthofen, who was credited with 80 kills. During the war, the German war ministry had him write a short autobiography that they published during the war, celebrating him, but he was eventually shot down by British fighters. And of course, the British had their own war hero they glorified during the war. We know him well in the Middle East, T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, who was celebrated in newsreels made at the time, and then of course became the subject of countless movies afterwards.
Yeah, that's World War I, but of course the mythology of individual acts of bravery, of individual stories, it continues, of course, to the Second World War.
It does, certainly. And let's look at Russia, because ironically, Russia had its own hero who fought off against a foreign invader, just the way the Ukrainians are celebrating. And that was the famous sniper of Stalingrad, who was credited with 40 kills, is a real guy named Vasily Zaitsev. And in fact, they made many movies about him in the Soviet Union. They also, about 20 years ago, in the U.S., made a movie about him starring Judd Law. It was called Enemy at the Gates. And the U.S. had a very well-known figure, Audie Murphy, one of the most celebrated soldiers of World War II in the European theater. He won the Congressional Medal of Honor for fighting off a German platoon. Audie Murphy later went to Hollywood, became a movie star, and actually portrayed himself in a movie called To Hell and Back. That was one of the most popular movies of that year in the 50s.
Yeah, Audie Murphy, I mean, the story clearly that an outmanned and outmatched individual American soldier taking over Nazi tanks and equipment, gunning them down, holding off a company for hours. It inspired a Hollywood movie. It inspired legends, and about just how incredible one man can be, the importance of one man standing up.
I do think it's important to note Audie Murphy actually in real life suffered severe PTSD that probably was not helped by the fact he had to recreate on camera his celebrated feats. But that shows you how far it goes. By the way, Quentin Tarantino in his movie Inglourious Basterds does something very clever. He takes the story of Vasily Zaitsev, the Stalingrad sniper, sort of combines it with the story of Audie Murphy, and then creates a German war hero, Frederick Zola, who was playing in the movie, who stars as himself in a movie. And of course, the whole climax of that movie is Adolf Hitler going to a movie theater in Paris, watching Frederick Zola play himself in a movie.
What about here, in the Middle East, here in Israel? Of course, no stranger to warfare.
No, of course, Jeff. If I say to you, who is the most most celebrated hero who entered the popular mythology, would have to be be
Yoni
Netanyahu.
As a warrior poet, of course.
As a warrior poet, the books, movies, already very quickly Israel made a movie, Operation Thunderbolt, about him. There have been several American films. So certainly Yoni Netanyahu is a prime example of a nation sort of adopting one soldier, not necessarily the greatest soldier, actually Ehud Barak, who became a politician. That's sort of hurt his image, but he is the most decorated soldier in Israeli history. But it's Yoni Netanyahu who gave his life we celebrate. And now, of course, we have the Ukrainian conflict.
And you also wanted to mention, it's interesting, you're talking about the individual call to action, a former beauty model contestant.
Well, here you talk about mythologizing somebody, because you mentioned the role. Now we have social media, Instagram. Anastasia Lena, a former Miss Ukraine, posted a picture of herself in military fatigues carrying a rifle that got millions of hits and plays around the world at call to arms. She had to clarify. People pointed out that that was something called an airsoft rifle that just fired pellets. She's not a real soldier. She just wants the image to serve as an inspiration. That's the power of social media, of a war hero.